Thanks for your time. My name is Zahra Aziza from Graduate School of Information Sciences, Tohoku University, Japan. I will introduce my research work with title Understanding the Relationship Between Learning Motivation and Academic Performance in Mobile Language Learning. Let's start with background of this study. Our research group currently developing a mobile language learning for studying Chinese language. This app aims to support students from a Japanese university to learn Chinese on beginner level. Students can learn it intermittently anywhere and anytime. Also, with the high volume of students' data available, allow us to easily collect and analyze students' activities as they proceed towards study goal. Using log data, we can explore learning patterns regarding time, dimension, and activities. Based on their score, we have opportunities to categorize students into some groups and analyze learning patterns on each group using learning analytics. Learning analytics help us to identify various patterns of learning process associated with learning outcomes. And what motivated us to start this research? So, how students act or behave during learning processes will determine their learning outcomes. These unrevealed processes recorded on log system on virtual learning environment. By analyzing these log systems, we help teacher to understand students' behavior. And by knowing students' behavior, we can identify any factors that support student self-regulated learning, also prevent number of students who might fail in future. And we hope we will know which motivation dominated on each performance-based groups. And here we come with our research questions. First, what are students' behavior that indicate motivations in second language learning? Second, to what extent learning motivation on high performances student? And the third, to what extent learning motivation on low performances student? And the next is methods of this study. So first, we have the settings of this research and also the participants. And the second is we measure the students' behavior by categorize the student into groups based on their performance. And also we identify students' learning motivation that happen on the log activities. And the third, we analyze the data by using some techniques. In year 2019 until 2020, there are 7 Chinese language classes with total student 239. The students has diverse background. So there are 3 engineering classes, 1 education class, 1 law class, 1 economic class, and 1 arts and letters class. We collected a year data from 2019 April until 2020 February. Because this study focused on learning patterns across differently performing group or based on final scores on first and second semester, so we only took into account the students who use mobile language learning apps and completed first and second semester. So, from total 239 students, only 221 students remain. As I mentioned earlier, we divide the students into some categories based on their performance into some groups. So we divide it into high performance group, medium performance group, and low performance group. The criteria of high performance group, so their average score from first and the second term is more than 80. And for mid performance, their average score is between 60 and 80 with no score below 60 from first and second term final. And for low performance, their average score is below 60 from final first or from the second term final. Next strategy is identify student learning motivation. What is motivation? Something encouraged to accomplish the goal. In this case, language learning, we identify the learning motivation into some parameters. The first is regularity of studies. Regularity of studies is total time spent in hour per week compared with teacher recommendation learning time, which is 15 minutes. And then repetition. Repetition is total time spent in hour per week in repetition mode. So basically, studied material X on assigned week T and then repeat it again after week D. And last, early learning. Early learning is degree how early student complete learned material. First, we're gonna discuss regularity of studies parameter. This parameter aims to find out how students' common patterns in learning time span across weeks. We are using mini-batch k-means as our technique and decide 4 as number of cluster. This cluster or patterns compared to the teacher recommendation learning time, which is 15 minutes. So if the time spent more than the teacher recommendation, it indicates the regularity of studies. So in this graph, we have 4 cluster or patterns of study. Patterns A3 and A4 has many more than teacher recommendation here. So this is the indication that A3 and A4 has a good or regular study pattern across the weeks. So after checking in each group of performance, we found out that high performance using cluster A3 and A4 as their study patterns. So compared with middle performance, they are only 3% of the students, and for the low performance, only 4% of them using these patterns. Next, we will discuss repetition. This parameter aims to figure out how repetition habit happen on each group of performance. Is there any positive effect of repetition applied among them? We are using linear regression here, and we found that in high performance students, there is positive effect here on repetition, but there is no effect on low performance students on repetition. So last parameter we are discuss is early learning. Early learning is a good sign that student enthusiastic with what they are learned. Higher early learning score means they are more enthusiastic than the lower score. This is the opposite of procrastinator, which is bad sign for learning. So what is early learning score? This is the formula of early learning score, where N is the number of completed tasks, AI is one task unit, DAI is the days between the completed day of the task unit and the first day of the material given at class, and D is the total days of material assigned. On average, they have 14 days to complete the task. So what we found from early learning, so after calculating the score and cluster them using k-means, we use 6 number of cluster by using elbow method, and we found there are some type of cluster that we gonna label them into 4 label. The first is highly motivated. So cluster B1 and B6 is highly motivated students. They are characterized by high early learning score and high number of activities. And cluster B2 and B5 is unmotivated. They are characterized by low early learning score and relatively low number of activities. And cluster B3, inconsistent, that is relatively early learner but moderate task completer. And cluster B4 as procrastinator, they are task completer but triggered by the deadline. So we found out that high performance student relatively highly motivated. There are 74% of the high performance is highly motivated, and then low performance has 0% on highly motivated, and most of the low performance are unmotivated, and also they are procrastinator. The last part is conclusion. So we found that 90% of high performance students use regular studies pattern, while only 3% of medium performance and 4% of low performance students use these patterns. And also high performance students has positive effect on repetition, while low performance students has no effect on repetition. And 74.4% of high performance students are highly motivated, contrast with low performance only 0. So that's all. Thank you so much.